Hello and welcome back to Blackwatch Intel, and first off, I'd like to say thank you so much for helping us cross 300 subscribers. I'm really excited that people are interested enough to continue to watch, and I just wanted to put that out there. We're also going to have a giveaway coming up in the near future. I'm still working on all the details on that and getting things situated, so stay tuned for that. I think it's going to be really exciting. It's going to be a different kind of giveaway, but something fun nonetheless. So credit where credit is due. I do want to give a shout out to OneAmongstMany. If you haven't checked him out, definitely go do so. He needs no introduction from me, but his video today, his coffee break series, is really fun. I really enjoy it. Kind of just a ranty podcast style video where he picks a topic and talks about it. Very similar to kind of what I do here on the channel for, the majority of my content. And I had already had this idea to talk about, but he just kind of gave me that reinforcement to go on ahead and push this out as a video. So today I want to talk about Hanzo. Now, specifically my opinions on Hanzo, and maybe even give some of my own thoughts on what could be done to make this hero better. Now, obviously I've kind of already given it away. I don't like Hanzo. I think he's probably the most useless hero in the roster. I think if you are more or less below the Masters level, you're really not adding any value to your team by picking Hanzo, and as someone that's played primarily around Diamond and Masters, even I struggle just to get, a decent, consistent amount of value by playing Hanzo. I've challenged myself a little bit to try to rank up with him. I've played him on Smurf accounts, and I'm not one-tricking, but I've played him a fair enough to feel like he's just not good. And I feel like the first thing people think about when they think about Hanzo is the scatter arrow. And while I don't personally have any problems with it, it can feel very kind of BS, and it is kind of frustrating, but you still have to kind of land the shot, and it doesn't feel that bad. It's not that terrible of a thing that he has in terms of how inconsistent he is. And while he brings a little bit of utility to the plate, he's just overall not a very good DPS hero. His damage is inconsistent, he's countered by the majority of the roster, and if you look at him, he doesn't really counter anybody on his own. Arguably maybe one or two, but in my opinion, he doesn't really counter anybody, so there's not really an optimal reason to ever pick Hanzo. And arguably, even if you are, kind of using him for combo with Zarya or using him in niche situations, there's someone else that can do that same thing better than he can. Just to kind of explain how little value I feel he brings to the table, if you wanted to run Hanzo as a second DPS pick, almost picking any other hero in the DPS pool would be better, or even picking another tank would be much, much better. His damage is inconsistent. He doesn't have a solid way to provide value. Now I feel like I'm beating on the the dead horse here by just saying it over and over again, but that's just how I feel. I feel like he's definitely the next hero that needs to be looked at for a rework, and he's something that we need to define. We need to understand how to make an archer hero very good without making them overpowered, and even if that is possible. So I wanted to share some ideas. I don't think this is going to be a crazy long video, but I do want to kind of talk about what they could do. So again, shout out to OneAmongstMany. Definitely check out his video in the description box below. He had the idea that maybe Hanzo could have a kind of like a scrolling wheel selection of arrows, and this idea is super cool to me. So essentially he could have various arrows that do different things, and they're very situational. Now, I loved this concept. I hadn't even thought about this myself until, listening to his coffee break video, and I kind of want to talk about that a little bit more. So imagine Hanzo has 5 arrows at his disposal, and I'll kind of touch on what OneAmongstMany said and kind of my ideas as well. And he has his E. So his shift brings up a window very quickly, and you select what arrow you want to use. Then that arrow can be applied to his E, and I want to say his E in this scenario, since it's its only real ability, should have multiple charges, maybe 2 to 4 charges, somewhere in there, depending on balance. And he has, let's say, a penetrating arrow that goes through shields. He has a scatter arrow that is, used for trying to give and getting, damage in tricky places. He has a fire arrow or an explosive arrow. So things that, the fire arrow could be used to cut off chokes, or, the explosive arrow could be used for additional burst damage or more direct kind of impact damage. So there's various different things you could do by giving Hanzo this kind of interesting playstyle by adding tech to him, adding tech on top of the arrows, and I feel like that would actually fit really well in the kind of universe of Overwatch. Now, while we've talked about that as a kind of rework and redesign of the hero, I do want to say that I think an issue I have with Hanzo currently is his just lack of mobility. While he can climb walls and he's, a Shimada who, is kind of like a ninja in his own right, he is just so slow and so immobile. So I think about heroes like Vayne from League of Legends or Vala from Heroes of the Storm, and I would love if he got maybe a new ability, or maybe his shift actually was an ability in the scroll wheel of his different arrows was on his E, where he had a tumble or a mini dash, something to give him a little bit of dodge potential, something to make him just a little bit harder to hit. Ultimately, when I think about Hanzo, I think about the Hanzo Pharah matchup, and oh god, it's impossible. You can't dodge anything. You have a hard time hitting Pharah, and while I don't necessarily think that Hanzo should counter Pharah, I do wish he had a little bit better tools, for himself. So maybe a small mini tumble or mini dash that gives him, a 1 to 2 second movement speed increase. Something that's simple, but could do a lot of justice for the hero. So overall, let's go ahead and recap this and wrap it up. I think Hanzo is just in the worst place that a hero in Overwatch could be at. I think he definitely needs to be looked at for rework. I think there's a lot you could do for a hero like this. I think there's a lot of appeal to make Hanzo better and to make Hanzo something that people want to go out there and play, not just because he's hard. So I'd love to see them change him up. I'd love to see some really interesting things change for Hanzo. And that's what I've got for today. So thanks again for checking out this video. Please do not leave without leaving a like and subscribe for future content. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.
Do you feel your bones start shake? Do you feel the earthquake? Do you feel the fire inside of me? Do you see the sparks that I'm setting free? Does the beat